So what this is all about is living in houses that are made of wood, that are made of timber. And first of all, we would really like to thank you all for being here. We would like to ask you guys to give a short introduction about who you are, what you are doing right now, and why you are involved in this whole building with timber idea. So let's start with Mr. Van Bortel. Could you maybe tell us something about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Bo. So I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Architecture at the Department of Management in the Built Environment. Very much focused on, constructing new homes, more affordable homes, homes that are circular, flexible, but also try to improve the energy efficiency and the circularity of the built environment. And also wooden products are very important for that. And next to that, I'm also board member of Forum, which is a study association for people working in the housing industry and for students at Delft doing a housing related topic.
Okay, thank you very much. Sounds very innovative. And then maybe Mr. De Monk, can you maybe tell something about yourself, what you're doing and why you're involved?
Yes, well, very happy to be in this panel first. I'm manager at the Netherlands Timber Trade Association, and I'm an advisor on environmental and sustainable innovation for Centrum Hout, which is the knowledge platform for the wood and wood industry in the Netherlands. I'm a tropical forester by learning, but I've been working in the timber trade for a couple of years and then start working for Centrum Hout in promoting responsible use of wood and wood products. And currently we have a campaign called Hout natuurlijk van nu, or Wood Naturally of the Present, promoting the wooden era. And we're very much focusing on stimulating people to use wood as a building material.
Okay, thank you so much. Beate Bouwman, could you maybe tell us a bit about what you are doing and why you're here?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation for this panel first. I'm partner co-founder in Woodist Housing, and we develop turnkey cross-laminated timber modules, and we discovered that it's really hard to enter a traditional market the traditional way. So we are not entering the traditional market the traditional way, but do it our way. That means that we integrate it further in the chain and develop our own projects, find the market, the end user, so not the housing corporations or the traditional members of the housing chain, and focus on temporary locations, because that is a new segment in the housing market where there is no huge interest of the existing parties. And we can enter that market because we also have a different business model. My background is I'm economist, and I started a bioecological construction company about 10 years ago. And the last 10 years mainly were a training route in all the knowledge of not only wood, but also natural materials, the building physics, and all the things where there is really a lack in the Netherlands. And the distance from state-of-the-art countries in this field is about 20 years. We tried that way to contact the TU in the past, so we are very, very glad to see that students themselves take action and claim we want to be architects of the future. So we need to learn the things which make us architects of the future. So that's in short.
Thank you so much. We'll get into everything about everyone later. But this is really only a short introduction. So finally, at last but not least, Max Draut, could you maybe tell us a bit about yourself, about what you are doing?
Yes, I'm Max Brecht. I'm from working by Primum. Primum is a business unit from Aveco de Bond, het ingenieurbureau, ingenieurbureau from Volker Wessel. And we are the business unit for all questions about an environmental circularity and healthy buildings. My background is I'm working there as a specialist for green buildings, circularity economy, and for healthy buildings. I'm studied 2 studies in architecture, the second in Germany over green buildings and green of environmental urban design. And I'm also studied in Germany as a building biologist. So I'm looking on materials and the healthy things on materials. So yeah, this is what I'm doing for Primum.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for this introduction. I think it's now to start with our first.
Yes, it's time to start. And I will share my screen. There you can see the statements. Okay, let's start with the first statement. And the first statement is about housing shortage, because today we are suffering from a huge problem that concerns availability of suitable housing. Because in the Netherlands there are a shortage of 300,000 and actually more than that we need. And that's why the government aims to build 75,000 units a year. But is this possible with the conventional methods of building? And therefore the statement, the first statement, the solution for house shortage is building with timber.
Yeah. So maybe Mr. Van Bortel, you could give your opinion on this statement.
Yeah, thank you, Bo. I think the challenge is even higher. I think we need to build around 100,000 homes a year in the next 10-15 years. We need 1 million homes, additional homes. I think that building in timber is part of the solution, because it's a beautiful material. It can help you to build in large numbers, in a sustainable way, in a circular way. But to solve the problem, you also need to solve the demand side of the housing market. So you need to find solutions to scale up, standardize, bundle, and make the demand for housing more predictable. To create an environment that construction companies, timber frame, CLT companies are able to produce in high volumes, but also volumes they can predict, and they are able to invest in production capacity. So it's part of the solution.
But this solution sounds as if there are a lot of variables. There are a lot of different things that are affecting those numbers, right? And this predictability has to do with certain varieties. And what I was wondering, what are they containing? Like, what are those varieties?
Well, I'm mostly focusing on the demand, so on what housing associations are doing, and what I see is that they're not able to pool their construction demand. So they think in projects, individual projects, and if you do it like that, you will never be able to scale up, because you will approach each project individually. If you're able to pool the projects, also we have more than 300 housing associations. if they're able to pool their demand, standardize it, but also make sure you have a constant stream of demand for houses, then prefabricated wooden homes, partly wooden homes, would be a solution to construct these homes.
And but isn't then also a risk that what happened right now with the prefabrication of concrete, that it's very efficient, but it creates a living environment in which there is a lot of uniformity.
Well, I think that wood is also a product that's very suitable for mass customization. So in that, make homes not kind of standard mass product, but also include things that are important for residents, like we do with cars. Cars are mass produced and also contain elements that are really focused on what customers want. So I think that's the challenge, to build in high volumes, but build in a way that's also high quality. And I think wood is a very good product to do that.
Well, I think that what Mr. Bortel says about planning and demand, etc., it's very important for future investments or even for present investments. But I think it's a building-wide problem at the moment, because if you look at the shortage, you need to have a planning anyway for any type of building. But I think if you look at the scale up and the problems of the current building sector, we are looking at shortages in skilled people on the building side. We are looking at hiccups in the concrete production, waiting times from 9 to 12 months, etc. And I think that if you focus on these prefabricated, industrial produced homes, it can be produced much faster with less personnel. It can be placed on the building site with less personnel. The quality is high. You have less transport, you have less NOx, etc. So the solution in timber building is multifunctional. You can tackle a couple of or many problems in current building at the same time. And even with only motivating housing corporations or developers or even bigger contractors to focus on building in wood, I think we can start this scale up. And I think that the scale up is much more hampered by either ignorance and lack of knowledge, fear of the new, than by the planning. I think that to get the ball rolling, I think that the smaller or the middle-sized projects will help to start this scale up, and then the bigger contractors will focus as well on this, well, a prefabricated way of building more than they are doing now.
Because
so that's why.
Sorry.
Yeah, that is why we from the Netherlands formed Centrum Hout to have an action plan to have a scale up from 1,500 timber frame houses up to 10,000 in a couple of years, to stimulate this trend. And we know that building all of the houses in timber or CLT is not the solution. I think it's not even possible, but I think it will and can be an accepted building solution for now and the future.
And you talked about this fear and this fear of the new. And where are those fears then right now? Are those the big contractors that are scared, or where is because you said that middle large.
It's about short-time fear, like it's about the costs, the short-time costs.
Well, I'm working for Centrum Hout for about 23 years, and we meet the same prejudice with timber building. For example, it has a lot of maintenance. It's fire prone, it's noisy, etc. So those technical aspects, which are or have been solved long time ago, are still in the heads of the consumer. And then if you talk to the constructors and you ask them, why don't you build in timber frame or partly in timber frame, they say, well, the market is not asking for this. And then if they ask for it, you say, why don't you build it in timber? Because the people ask for it. They say that it's too expensive. And then you ask, well, why is it too expensive? And then you see that they incorporate in the total cost the cost of risk. And because they are not used to building in wood, they have an extra percentage put on top of their how do you call this, aanbesteding, so they're offering. And then they're always more expensive than traditional. So if you have more knowledge, more trust, more project to show that it's possible, then they can lower their prices, and even banks can have more favorable loans for those companies or housing corporations to get this running. So it's a chain of prejudice and knowledge, lack of knowledge, and we're trying now to get a breakthrough. And you see that society is changing, and policymakers are changing. They have developing a slight preference for bio-based materials, and I think this is maybe the turning point that we can also solve the other problems. For example, we can prove that the new timber houses are not noisy. They don't have to be. They don't have to be fire prone. We're building according to the same building regulations. We have the same performance. So why is wood more fire prone than other products? That's not the case. So we can prove now, because there is a slight confidence growing in bio-based building.
So you say it's more, it has more factors that are good compared to other materials, and that you can prove that now, right?
Yes, and one last point, and then I'll leave the floor to other panel members. What we do also when we build in timber, we have extreme high expectations about quality, about aesthetics, etc. I don't know if you've viewed the webinar last week, that there was a constructor, and he said, well, if we were able to put the same quality in housing as concrete does, then we're half the price. Because if you look at concrete slab, it's ugly. But if they put a wooden floor in, it has to be the best of the best of the best. So then you have to also have different expectations about quality. And I'm not saying that building in wood has a lower quality. No, even more, we have a higher quality. And there is one anecdote about building the new headquarters of Triodos in Zeist. The builder,
Thomas Rowe, right?
Yeah, that one. The builder is traditionally a concrete and steel builder, and they started working with CLT in that project, and they were not very happy with the wood. You know why? Because usually if they get the concrete slabs and steel framing, they have a centimeter or centimeters, how do you call this?
Slack or spaling?
Or spaling between, and they can do everything on site, repair on site. But the wooden elements are with a precision of a few millimeters. So if they make a mistake, it doesn't fit. It's not the material, it's the way of building. So what about quality?
Say something over the first statement?
Yeah, of course we.
Of course.
And also what Eric de Munk net said, that we have to learn to build with it. I also see in my work from the constructors that they try to find out who to work with it and not looking around the most cross-laminated timbers coming from Scandinavia, from Germany, from Austria, and there they know how to build with it, and then it's coming to our countries, and yeah, the construction side, I see it a lot of in the company for Vessels. Yeah, they started and don't know how to do it, but don't ask the companies where it's coming from. So because we have not so much wood in Netherlands that we can do it for with 100% FSC wood in our country. So we have to work together in Europe, and then we have so much that it can be not the solution for the housing shortage, but it is an yeah, it's just an something what really we can do it faster.
Okay, thank you very much. Book, should we go to the next one?
Yeah, shall we go to the next one, and then Beate Bouwman can also give her opinion on this here, because what we see is that over the last decades there has been a huge growth of urbanization, but at the same time recent investigations show us that nature has a big influence on our health, our physical and our mental health. And is it possible that timber buildings can contribute to the combination of those two? So that's why we have the statement that timber buildings can create a stronger connection between the urban environment and nature. Mrs. Bouwman, could you give your opinion on this?
Yeah, when I read this statement, I say definitely no. If you build with timber, timber is a dead material, and if you're lucky, it's a dry material. But it's not a nature. Nature is really something different. You can think of trichonomics or everything to make an urban environment looking like nature. So that, having that said first, I think that timber buildings can support the user, the end user, in becoming more conscious, not conscious, nieuwsgierig.
Curious, yeah.
Yeah, curious in materials, because the normal things, wood is for sure not in the Netherlands a material. You don't see that often in the at the inside of a building. You see it sometimes at the outside as a facade, but not in the inside. So if you enter a timber building made with wood or other natural materials, you get intrigued. And that might, I'm very careful about that, make the end user more curious. Where does the material come from? How is it sourced, built, and applied in my building? But basically, I would say here, no. You need a very, very good story to make an end user believe that he's in nature in a timber building. I can't make more of it.
But maybe it's also because, I mean, an architectural experience is more than just what you see, right? So maybe the material is dead, but it still could have a bit of scent that refers to nature, which maybe could get a little ball rolling in a head, or maybe give the sense of nature more.
Feel like there's a connection.
Well, no. If I may comment, if I look at this statement, I think there is a bit of truth in it, because if you look at the traditional building and you compare it to trees and other forms of nature or forest or nature or combinations of landscapes elements, I think that timber buildings with timber on the outside, even if it's a dead material, which I do not agree with, technically yes, but aesthetically no. If you look at surroundings where there's more wood on the outside of buildings, it more and more blends into nature or into the surroundings. And an architect once told me, and I read some Japanese literature as well, that if you look at wood, the fifth dimension of wood is that it's the only material that weathers, that gets old, gets more beautiful by aging. So it's like a wabi-sabi thing, something we don't recognize in European societies. But if you look at nature-oriented societies, they value this changing of materials according to weather, to age, etc. So in that sense, I think that wood has a stronger connection with environment and nature than other materials. So in that perspective, aesthetically, I think there is more benefit in using wood on the outside, which I'm not the most favorite of, but yes, I think there's a connection. You can see a connection.
Yeah, me too. To add to that, so we did a bit of research for the Erasmus Medisch Centrum. We called it Green View, looking at if patients recover more quickly if they have a view on green.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is also the same thing. If more research is needed, researchers often say that, but maybe it's interesting to look at this, if there's an impact on health and
I would like to add something here, because my background is also in building biology, and building biology really also focus on the interaction of the end user and materials. And of course, there is an interaction between color. For example, if you have red walls, you can lower your temperature for 1 degree. It's very easy, but it's not connected with timber. Timber has its philological aspects. If I see, timber does something to your body. But if I look at the statement, timber buildings can create a stronger connection between the urban environment and nature, then I say no. But can timber buildings, do they have influence on the end users, on their skin, on their well-being? Yes, they have. That is proven. There is from Professor Moser in Austria. He had this research in a timber school, and what happened to the kids? Their heart rhythm were lowered by the material, and there's other research on colors and also on clay. All these natural materials, they have an influence on your body, but that doesn't fit. So I agree with that, but that doesn't fit with the statement.
Yeah,
that's why.
Then
I say
yeah,
no
but
to
then
this.
is the question. I think then is the question that the effect that this material has on your body and on your health and your mental health. Is it the same, or does it look like the same? The effect that nature, as we know it, has on your body and on your mind. Because this, if it has a bit of the same, then maybe the connection is more there.
Then should we go to the next statement, because that's actually the next one, because that's about health and timber buildings. Living in timber buildings improves the health of residents. And yeah, then you can talk about, has the smell also, or the texture has that influence on the resident itself.
I would say, if I'm making a comment on this statement, it can be have a big really healthy for the residents, but there you have to look how and which sort you use, because there are a lot of timbers with coatings and colors and something like this, where this effect from that it's for healthy for the residents gone away if you're using these coatings. There are a lot of things you need for laminated timber. If you're not making without with wood plugs or something like this, if you're use what is lime in English?
Glue.
Glue,
Yeah.
and there can be a lot of things where the timber is not healthy for the residents. So you have to do something that this glue of formaldehyde or something like this don't come from out the timber in the room, then it's not healthy.
Yeah.
So you have to look in not only that is wood of timber, you have to look for it completely product, and then you can say it's healthy for the resident.
So you say how
then
it's
it can
treated.
also regulate water in the air.
Humidification?
Yeah, yes, it can regulate it in the building, so you don't have to use ventilation or something like this. And then you're working with timber and other bio-based materials together. So because they take water out the air and give it back to the room if yeah, it is not any longer healthy for the resident. So it can regulation something like this, but also with heat in rooms in the summer. So can also working timber or other bio-based materials. But you have every time to look what is in the completely product, if it's healthy or not. So you can't say it timber is healthy. So every time.
Yeah, but it's this statement. I agree on some parts of it, but this also is true for all the other materials. And I think that a lot of problems are not only caused by the material choice, but usually also by design. If you look at the problems of health in buildings, it's usually tied to bad ventilation, either in design or by the residents' way of living. And I think that the chance to have a better environment in wooden buildings is much better if well designed than with other materials.
Why do you think this?
Because the materials in itself, despite of the glues used, I think this item, you should have interest in this, but usually it's largely exaggerated, I think, because if the production of CLT is usually by low formaldehyde exhausting glues, because they're all at E1, and even they're looking now for the E0 production with some of the suppliers of CLT. And if you look at the highest production of formaldehyde in a house, it's usually the garment, the floor coverings, clothes we wear, and even we as humans exhaust formaldehyde. So I think if you look at the health in a building, you should also take that in account. But the most important thing, and that's with the toxins that might come from materials, but also in the heating, is in the sense of good design and a good installation. Because we're talking now also with the new regulations for heating and insulation, the BENG. I think that with a good design and natural ventilations, a lot of problems or heating can be solved. But this is a way of innovation and developing and putting work into the quality of housing in general.
Right.
Because we have the same problems with concrete as well, with radiation, etc. So
you say there
Yes,
needs to be more effort on how a resident lives in a house, and despite of the material.
Yes, but also in
and the
design.
design.
So I'm very happy that the TU is involved in architecture. So I hope that from now on, building in wood and good design in general, including the installation, will be a much bigger part of your curriculum. So you can learn where where the pitfalls are, and that you, as you're on the market, which will not be that long, that you can do it the way it should be done.
Thanks for the feedback, Erik.
Yeah, you're welcome. But
Take it
this
with
is a
you.
lack. This is a lack. I last week, no, 2 weeks ago, I spoke to a student from TU, not from architecture, but from construction, and he said, I didn't know you could make buildings with wood. I thought you can only use it for making fences. I think, what? This is a graduate. I don't know.
Yeah, but
what
not
happens?
from architecture, I hope.
No, not an architecture.
Okay.
And should we go to the next one, Bo?
Yeah, let's go to the
only one.
last,
The last
or-
statement.
Can I do noch one point with this?
Yeah, of course.
I'm not totally agree with that we have to use some good installations to make to make the healthy safe in for the residents, because as a building biologist I say it starts with materials, and if you don't need something in a material, so as formaldehyde or something like this in glue, it is not you don't need it to use it, but it's the cheapest way to make a glue. And
Yeah,
if you
I agree.
if you have
Natural
it
ventilation.
if you build a house, then at CLT where it inside is with some a wooden floor and something like this, and all materials, and also concrete and all other materials. So if you can do with materials that you don't need installations, then
Sure.
this is the best way. And there, if you're looking around in, this is not a new, that is, this building is from timber, but there is an in Austria a building. It's a building. They don't need heating. They don't need ventilation, and they also don't need in the summer cooling. So and only because they are choosing the right materials to create this, and this you can perfect do this also with timber products. So there are also a lot of and we are looking I'm looking together with some persons in our company that we can create timber houses where we don't need ventilation.
Okay, thank you very much. Bo, should we go to the next one?
Yeah, shall we go to the next one, and then which is in the future timber buildings will be the standard. And I wanted to ask Beate Bouwman what she thought about this, also because you talked about this whole new different kind of economy and new system, and get rid of the old boys network and make your own system and your own way of building. I was very curious about this, that you said this in the introduction.
Concerning the statement, I think it's a very wishful statement. Actually, I think timber will really regain a very state-of-the-art standard and position in the whole construction. But I don't believe that there will be one standard in the future for the whole construction thing. If you look worldwide, the demand is so huge. And if you see the developing countries, there they really look critical to concrete, but they are still using concrete a lot. And then if you want to have a timber standard, then you also need to look at where do we get the timber from, under which conditions. And of course, we all love more trees. We need trees really for the future of the earth. But the timber timber is under a very high pressure because of alternative energy. The construction industry is one of the latest industry discovering timber for the future. So we need to be realistic. That is also one of the requirements why we say if you use timber for construction, you don't need to look at timber as a bio-based material, but as a never-ending building material. So keep the timber you use with an unending cycle in the construction or in any other condition. That is what we actually do with on different levels with the modules, or let's say whole projects, the modules, the elements, the timber itself. And then if you look at the circular economy, we changed from a glue-less massive timber material to a cross-laminated timber, which has to do with pricing, sourcing, research, knowledge, all these things. But we also need to be critical at all the other ingredients we use in construction, like the glues, the additives. So be realistic. Cross-laminated timber still in the bulk uses glue, where there are isocyanates in the glue, which you basically don't really like to have in your buildings. And it's like the treatment of the wood. So that is something why we said, to me, it's not enough just to buy wood, but I want to be responsible for the wood I buy and I own. And so basically what we tell architects are, you only design and only use materials that you can be responsible for. If you can't do that, if you don't have any influence on that part, don't do it. It's a really, really hard question we ask, but that is why we build another business model. We want to construct with wood we know, with additives we know, and when we get those things back after a project, we can use it again on a higher level, not on a lower level. So not for thermal use, but really for construction. So concerning the statement, I think we still have a really long way to go to make timber buildings a new standard. And on the other hand, in the more than 12 years experience in the materials, I haven't seen any other construction material that is better than timber. So yeah, so that's basically how we look at timber.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much. Does anyone have anything to add to this beautiful story, or are we gonna end it this way? Because I think that we have already talked a little bit less than an hour, which is already way longer, and it was definitely a great pleasure to hear everything that you guys had to say.
Yeah, it really was.
But if someone has to add, really wants to add one last thing, it is possible right now, and otherwise I think we've heard very beautiful and
thank you for
things.
Joining the discussion and the panel, and
it was a pleasure.
Your opinion.
Yeah.
But
Good luck
maybe
with your event.
Maybe it's a suggestion that everyone has a final statement or wish for the future. Statement 4 is one of the wishes, I think. It's a boy's wet dream, and I'm working for this for the last 23 years, and I think that we are close to to a change. So I think, I hope that timber building will be the standard, or the standard to strive for, and that we together and you as students will have a big contribution to this turnaround.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah.
Can I add to that? Because I would love to have a circular built environment as soon as possible. We want to have it by 2050. Maybe we can achieve it earlier. And I think timber will be an important part in that future.
I have one other statement or question. I think you as future architect, you just have to do one thing you already started with. That is, knock at the doors of the university and claim that you will get the knowledge which is necessary to be an architect of the future. That also means that you have to question a lot of things which were built on the construction, on the concrete industry. Concrete will remain in business, but maybe not for the bulk of housing which is needed. So knock at the door of your university and claim for the knowledge.
I do then also a last comment. I think it's also good not also to look on the last period that will with the name traditional buildings in the Netherlands. It's also good nu ben ik in Nederlands. Also really good to look before the year 1940 and something like this, because the most buildings before 1940 are built from a combination. So a lot of clay bricks together with a lot of wood in the houses.
Thank you very much. And you will see the recordings next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Doei.
Thank you. Bye bye.